What is up, Bears fans? Welcome to the Bears Huddle podcast, your UK take on all things Chicago Bears. I'm Owen W. James, and this is your news update, guys. Obviously, if you just found the channel, please like, comment, share, and of course, more importantly, subscribe as we seek to get to 1,000 subscribers as soon as possible. When we hit 1,000, the more we can do with the channel, guys, the more Bears news we can bring you, and the more content we can do for you as well. Right, look, let's talk a little bit of Bears football. We're also going to touch on last night's Super Bowl as well, and what the Bears can take from last night's Super Bowl. And I've got my thoughts on the game last night, thoughts on the bad halftime show as well, so we'll talk about that too. Right, look, let's start off with the first piece of news that's come out of Chicago over this weekend. That is that the Bears are promoting passing game coordinator Press Taylor to be the new offensive coordinator to replace Declan Doyle, who's obviously gone off to work as the OC of the Baltimore Ravens. Look, I've got my own set of thoughts on this. I get why Ben has made this decision. You know, pass game coordinator, probably the easiest to replace. Maybe doesn't even need replacing. You know, maybe that's a role you can kind of shuffle off on. Maybe JT Barrett as quarterbacks coach, or Antoine Randall as assistant head coach and wide receivers coach. You know, both of those could quite easily, I think, take on this role. So as a coach, if you're not going to go outside the organisation, taking Taylor away from that role probably doesn't weaken the offensive staff as much as perhaps it would in other ways, and be as big a risk as it would be of, say, promoting Antoine Randall or promoting JT Barrett, because then you've got to go and find a new quarterbacks coach, or you've got to find a new wide receiver coach, and then you know taking a risk on not getting someone at the same level as Randall or as JT Barrett. Look, I'll give you that. I mean, my personal belief, my personal preference would have been to go with Antoine Randall. I think, you know, if you make him offensive coordinator, I think if you go with Antoine Randall as offensive coordinator, you know, I think you also ensure he's here for longer. You keep him in place a little bit longer. I think there is a very real risk that we could lose Antoine Randall next summer in this offseason of 2027. But look, it is a risk that we make. It is a risk that you take, and it is what it is. Now, I get that not everybody is impressed at this appointment. Some people are really, you know, happy with this appointment. Other people are not impressed with this appointment, and I get why. You know, look, he had a very mixed time in Jacksonville. He did great things with Trevor Lawrence. Fantastic. The moment he didn't have Trevor Lawrence, he really struggled. And sometimes, you know, that is a test of you as an offensive coordinator. You know, the fact that when you don't have your top guy, can you produce the same with the offense without your top guy? Can you get your offense to work as effectively without your top guy? So, you know, I get that. And I hear not great things all the time about him from Jacksonville Jaguar fans. So, look, it is what it is. It is a mixed picture. You know, yeah, he had great times with Trevor Lawrence, and then he had bad times without. So, look, it is what it is, guys. I personally, like I said, I would have preferred Randall as the OC if you're going to promote from within. I would have liked to actually bring someone in from outside. A fresh pair of eyes may have actually helped, especially helped along with the development of Caleb Williams. I think there's also perhaps a consistency here. Perhaps Ben is looking at this in terms of consistency for Caleb. You know, the fact that he's going to bring in keep it the same sort of guy, so Caleb is hearing the same constant message. He's not getting a new message from anybody. I get that as well. I suppose at the end of the day, we have to trust Ben Johnson. We have to trust what Ben is saying and the decisions that Ben is taking. Look, he hasn't done anything to let us down so far. In terms of Press Taylor's resume as a coach in the NFL, he's got a long resume. He didn't obviously play as a player, but has a pretty good resume. In terms of what he's achieved, he's a graduate assistant at Tulsa, offensive quality control coach for the Philadelphia Eagles, assistant quarterbacks coach for the Eagles, quarterbacks coach and passing game coordinator for the Eagles. Was part of the Eagles roster that won the Super Bowl, so obviously has that on his resume. Was the senior offensive assistant in Indianapolis when Peterson was there, then went to be offensive coordinator in Jacksonville when Doug Peterson was there, then came to the Bears as the passing game coordinator before obviously this coming season, being made the OC. So he brings a rich experience and a Super Bowl winning experience to the roster. Hopefully that's something that obviously he can do. Now it'd be interesting to see how he is used this coming season, what Ben wants from him, whether it's again just filling in and taking over and being what Declan Doyle was. Obviously, I know that Declan Doyle was held in very, very high esteem by the rest of the Bears organisations. So hey, it is what look, guys, it's a positive as well as as a negative. I think there's a mixed message on this. You'll all have your own views. I'd love to know what your views are on the promotion of Press Taylor. Right, guys, the Super Bowl obviously last night. The congratulations to the Seattle Seahawks, the NFL champions, world champions, the Super Bowl winners, beating the New England Patriots. Always good to see the Patriots lose. Look, personal reflection is, for me, whoever won that NFC championship game was going to win the Super Bowl. Whether that had been the Rams, whether that had been the Seahawks, whether it had been us. I think we could have beaten the Patriots for what it's worth. I think genuinely they would have won the Super Bowl. The Seahawks did. The Rams would have done. I think. I've got to say, as a spectacle, it was a fairly boring game. It wasn't a great game at all. It did one thing though. It did give a lot of truth to the statement that defense wins championships. The Seahawks absolutely suffocating defense won that title for them last night. Let's not pretend that Sam Darnold, Clint Kubiak, or even Kenneth Walker, who got the MVP, won that game. It was the defense that won that game for the Seahawks. On the halftime show, I thought the halftime show was genuinely dreadful. Didn't understand a word of it. It was genuinely garbage, and I do think it's exceptionally sad how people online are trying to turn this into a political statement, into a political conversation, as the halftime show was some sort of referendum on Donald Trump, on the president, on the American government. Look, I don't have any political persuasion in America. I'm not Republican. I'm not Democrat. I'm from England, guys. I really, couldn't care less who runs your government as long as they do it well for you. But look, for me, the Super Bowl is a sporting event. It's not a political event. And I really wish that, and it is the left that are doing it, the woke lefties would stop trying to make this about politics and about a referendum on Trump or a referendum on the American government. It's not. It's a sporting event. And let's take the halftime show for what it was. It was a guy who can't singing in a foreign language, whose music is genuinely trash. So let's just take it for what it is. It was probably one of the worst halftime shows I've ever seen in my entire life. Genuinely, it was shit. It was awful. Bad Bunny, shit Bunny. I think if your bunny was that bad, you'd take him to the vets and get him put down. If your bunny was that bad, right? Let's take a bit of what we can actually learn though from the Super Bowl, other than the fact that Bad Bunny is awful. I think the first thing is that defense wins championships, and I think going forward, hopefully Ryan Poles and Dennis Allen watching that game last night will understand now. This off-season, once the cap space can be made, and it is obviously all dependent on making that cap space, is about building that defensive line and building that Bears defense up to be the ferocious monsters of Midway, the in-your-face, wreck things, destroy things defense that we saw. Now, I think one of the encouraging things for me last night was you look at that Seattle Seahawks defense and you look at the players they have, and the one thing you would say about that Seattle Seahawks defense is there is no alpha pass rusher on that defensive line. There is no one you would put in the same category as a Myles Garrett, as a Max Crosby, as a TJ Watt, as a Trey Hendrickson. Certainly no one you'd put up there in terms of that quality of level. It is a sort of pass rush by committee kind of job. DeMarcus Lawrence is a very good player. Byron Murphy is a very good player. Leonard Williams, very good player. Derek Hall, very good player. Their linebacker core of Nwosu, Jones, and Drake Thomas, again, very good core. But there is no alpha there for me. And the Bears can learn from that they don't perhaps have to go out and splash and splurge millions of dollars on a Hendrickson or a Crosby. Maybe also you look at the fact that this Seahawks team was kind of built through the draft. You look at the draft, you look at players you can bring in, players you can develop. You look at those perhaps on the border, on the cusp that you can develop and bring through for slightly cheaper price in free agency that could build this defense up. And I think that's a lesson that does need to be learned. And look, yes, I know that the season before, again, the defense played a big role, but obviously the Eagles' defense is a more big money defense. But again, the building of that defensive line has to become a priority in this offseason for me. The offensive line obviously was last off-season's priority. It is this season's priority to build this defensive line, to bring this pass rush, to give the defense more of an opportunity to help not only the secondary, but to help the offense by putting pressure on the opposition passer, by getting in his face, by keeping the ball in his hand a bit longer and getting after him. And that's something I think that we do need to pick up on. The secondary for the Seattle Seahawks also exceptionally good. Devin Witherspoon is a talent, obviously. Nick Emanuari is an absolute talent. Josh Jobe is a talent. Julian Love is a talent. The sorting out of that safety room has become, given the schemes as well that Seahawks ran, I think the sorting out of that safety room has become even more important going forward. So, hopefully one of the key lessons that they take away from last night, for me, is they need to build this defense up. They need to look at what the Seahawks have done, what the Eagles did the season before. The line has to be a key priority for this offseason. Through the draft, through free agency, build it up, make it scary, make it the Monsters of Midway again. That, for me, is what we need to do moving forward. Guys, love to know your thoughts on that one. Let me know your thoughts in the comments and your thoughts on last night's Super Bowl, of course. Thank you for watching the Bears Huddle podcast. Please like, comment, share, and of course, subscribe and bear down.